There's a brand new 2D animated Ninja Turtles out, but because we live in the era of streaming, I feel like no one I know has even heard of it. Even fellow nerds that like TMNT and actively seek out these kinds of shows. This is far from the only series this has happened to. There's a lot of great animated shows coming out right now, many of which are based on established IPs and no advertising for them at all. Even after they put it on Netflix, still pretty much radio silence. And yet, Tales of the TMNT is a series that really surprised me, and even though I loved it, I can't help but feel like it's already been set up to fail. But first, I want to give thanks to this video's sponsor, Private Internet Access VPN. What is a VPN? Well, whenever you're browsing online on an unprotected device such as your phone, computer, tablet, console, etc., your device is transmitting a ton of personal information out into the open which can be viewed by various different entities before reaching the intended website. A virtual private network, or VPN for short, is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel that shields your digital life from the eyes of those that are looking to exploit your private information. Private Internet Access is the world's most transparent VPN provider, with over 30 million downloads. They never record or store user data, and their no-log policy has been proven multiple times in court by a third-party audit from Deloitte. With them, your information is safe. PIA will hide your IP address and encrypt your internet connection. But they also provide entertainment benefits too, like allowing you to access full libraries of streaming services and unlocking region-locked content by changing your server location. My wife thought this was a cool feature because it allowed her to check out the Netflix selection from her home country, and it was a big nostalgia blast. Using a streaming service without PIA VPN is like paying for front row seats at a cinema but you're seated in the hallway. I choose Private Internet Access VPN over its competitors because it's got a great price and it's so user-friendly. If you sign up for Private Internet Access today using my link in the description, you can grab an 83% discount. That's just $2.03 a month, and you also get 4 extra months completely for free. You won't want to miss this deal. Now back to the video. I really like TMNT Mutant Mayhem. My wife and I saw it in theaters 3 times with different groups of people, many of which had no attachment at all to Ninja Turtles as a brand, but everyone came out of it really enjoying it. Mutant Mayhem brought a lot of new and cool stuff to the table for Turtles. From its incredibly detailed and dark art directions, stylizing the world and characters like scribbled drawings in a child's sketchbook, or its realistic and naturalistic dialogue between the Turtles, who are characterized more like real teenagers and actually played by age-appropriate voice actors to really sell that underrepresented side of them. A lot of the teenage aspect of them is more like a grown adult's idea of a teenager during that respective time period, but this is the first time the teenager part of them felt this authentic because of how much creative leeway the voice actors were allowed to bring to their dialogue.
Hey, I'm Michelangelo. Perfecto.
That makes you Leonardo.
No, it doesn't. No.
Hey,
Nardo.
Dude, it could be Leon Ardo. That's a cool name, Leon.
Leonardo. He's sensitive.
Leonardo.
They have great chemistry as a cast, and their improvisation made the brothers really feel like brothers. The movie also had some really well-executed action and some fun new interpretations of classic TMNT side characters, who had been implemented in a much more streamlined way. I could gush about why Mutant Mayhem is a great new addition to the mythos all day, and yet, when I saw that the animated series was announced as a direct continuation of the movie, I weirdly didn't care. I guess I was still feeling the sting of losing out on more seasons of Rise of the TMNT, but when this first dropped, my initial reaction was, I'll get around to it. And then I put off watching it for several months like a fool, a dullard, a boob. I had this idea that it was probably going to be lower stakes, lower quality, and less interesting than the movie it spawned from. I was already very emotionally invested in this version of the Turtles, and I was worried this could harm that by being just average, or maybe a little bad. The one trailer they put out for it didn't set it up for failure like Paramount's other awesome animated project last year, but it didn't highlight that this was going to be just as good as Mutant Mayhem either. It turns out Tales of the TMNT is really just an extension of everything I liked about the movie. Like a massive expansion DLC for a video game. Actually more like 2 expansions, since Tales of the TMNT is divided into 2 distinct halves, each with a different main story. Also, we're running out of names for Ninja Turtle shows because Season 5 of the 2012 show was also called Tales of the TMNT. though that was more of an anthology to just screw around since they wrapped up the main story but got renewed for another season anyway. Remember Mad Max, Raph? That was fun. This Tales of the blah 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 kind of reminds me of the way old Resident Evil games used to do their scenario thing. Characters all start at one place, then they get split up and each of them has a different perspective of the main adventure and a different location with their own side characters before all the plots converge and they meet up again at the end. This was a great way to give us more time with each of these turtles individually. If there's any drawback the movie had, it's that they're always together and bouncing off each other, so we didn't get as much time alone with each turtle to know this version of them. They're always in a group dynamic and working in conjunction with each other, but the series uses this format to give us a sense of how they each do things alone. And it's nice to see that they're all competent heroes in their own right, even without the other three to back them up. As such, everyone gets their own episode to showcase more of their personality and how they each tackle problems individually. They even went so far as to make the voice actors record their lines separately for each character this time. This show is run by Alan Wan, storyboard artist for the last 3 Turtle shows, and superhero cartoon virtuoso Christopher Yost, who you may know as the head writer of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Wolverine and the X-Men, and he wrote a ton of episodes of the 2003 Turtle show, and Thor the Dark World. Ah, that's okay, man. They can't all be winners. That's still a great batting average. Seeing as how the movie ended with the Turtles being accepted by the public and allowed to attend human high school, I thought this series would explore that, but instead it's entirely set on off days outside of their schooling stuff, and both halves really only take place on one day each. I assume this is because they didn't want to step on the toes of the imminent sequel, since the Turtles and school thing is a big new direction to take things. But I don't mind this keeping the story a little bit more traditional with them sticking to the streets and sewers. Both halves of the show follow up on the fallout of the movie's final battle in different ways. The first being about the Turtles being hunted by a mad scientist and her killer robots after the battle with Superfly destroyed her life's work. The second is about a whole new sect of mutated animals that have cropped up to terrorize New York after Superfly's mutation machine fell into the Hudson River. These guys have learned about humanity through television and movies, with their leader Goldfin modeling himself after Bond villains with aspirations of flooding New York City to make it more comfortable for his aquatic mutants. The first 6 episodes focus more on the Turtles, but the later ones include some of the side characters from the movie and pair them off with each turtle. I think I was more interested in Bishop, the villain of the first arc, because she seemed to have an odd complexity to her. She blames the Turtles for everything that's gone wrong in her life. She missed out on her dream of creating revolutionary prosthetic limbs for people like her paraplegic sister, and was instead stuck working for an evil CEO to essentially babysit his adult son with Arrested Development. Then Superfly destroyed her lab and she developed this hatred of mutants on an existential level, seeing them as a threat to humanity. The team even managed to successfully counter her absurd puritanical philosophy.
What? It means your eyes, dude!
Will you shut up about my eyes already?
All life forms have the potential for mutation, including humans.
But what I find really fascinating is how she's forced to work with them, see the humanity in them, they even forgive her actions, and then after all that, she still chooses to turn on them again anyway. Like, her grief and her thirst for revenge were so great that she made a conscious decision to hate them anyway, even when she had every opportunity not to. They did everything they could to redeem her character and make amends, but it was easier for her to keep hating them, and in a way it gave her a new purpose in life. Sometimes you really just can't convince people to be less awful. They enjoy it too much. Logic or human decency be damned. They can only make that choice for themselves. I really hope the sequel movie brings Bishop back in some fashion to follow up on the show, because she's their most compelling antagonist so far. She's nothing like the 2003 series character in a physical sense, but she sort of ends up in the same job position as him and shares the same worldview, so it's kind of a cool remix. I swear to God, Donatello's voice actor must have hit puberty between recording sessions, because you can hear the difference.
Heck yeah, I did. Quick tip. Never get into a battle of the wits with a mutated turtle.
Come on, work with me. You said Loch Ness Monster was underrated, remember? Previously, on Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The second we get a power outage in the lair, it's somehow my fault.
An added layer of brilliance to the casting of the Turtles, on top of the fact that, while they're all the right age and they have prior professional voice acting experience in various projects, is that they're also cheap enough to reprise their roles in the series. You wouldn't get that if you had Timothy Chalamet and Tom Holland playing Raphael and Leo or some awful Hollywood garbage like that. The 2007 animated movie also got this right, but that movie has only one good scene in it. I shit you not, there's one good scene. And just like there, all those celebrity stunt casts were saved for the supporting characters. All these mutants are voiced by, some famous idiot, who cares?
Where is Mondo Gecko? Is he safe? Is he alright?
In his fame, they went over budget. They killed him.
I was surprised by how much of the movie cast remained intact for the series. I thought for sure they'd have to recast some of the characters with impressionists that sounded similar. A lot of Hollywood actors have a chosen voice double for merchandising purposes. Jack Black has Mick Wingert. Tom Hanks has his brother Jim do the voice of Woody in everything except the movies. I was expecting they'd use Jackie Chan's usual sound-alike James Tsai, who you might know as Monkey in the Kung Fu Panda tie-in material or Jackie Chan Adventures. Instead, they reserved him in the tie-in video game, which I also intend to play and review sometime. For this series, they either have Splinter talking in the rodent language like their mutant cockroach friend Scumbug in the first half, and in the second half, they do this weird meta-narrative thing where it's Raphael telling the story of what happened.
Let me tell you a story.
But that includes Splinter telling the story of what happened.
Do you remember the storm of the century?
What do you mean, do we remember? We were there.
Man, I thought we were gonna get
Why
food.
are you talking like this in
Why do you have
general?
a phone?
Let me tell you a tale.
And Raphael is filling in for Splinter's voice in both layers of flashbacks. To his credit, Brady Noon is a good enough voice actor that it kinda works and you sort of forget after a while.
You grew up in a loving and stable home. They grew up with Superfly. They need positive role models.
And thank God he's doing like a gruff Batman sounding voice instead of trying to do an impression of Chan's accent. That wouldn't fly. But I think having two layers of the story being told by another character is just too convoluted of a workaround, and I would have been fine if they just got James Tsai or someone who sounded similar. There's also the consideration that you can only afford someone that's a well-known actor for a theatrically released movie, like Paul Rudd as Mondo Gecko or John Cena as Rocksteady. I've noticed a really funny recurring thing where an actor is able to voice a character on television up until they headline a big live-action superhero movie, and then you have to recast them. Robert Downey Jr. in Family Guy as Lois's brother, for instance. And then they have to recast him the next time he shows up. You can get the goofy guy from Parks and Rec for a Ben 10 episode, but then he became Hollywood star Chris Pratt. Even in TMNT, John Cena voiced Baron Draxum in Season 1, and then he started to get really into superhero stuff as Peacemaker, and the rest of the series had to use Roger Craig Smith. But Tales has those kinds of characters kinda dip out off screen. They're mentioned but not seen. Otherwise, they still got Rose Byrne to play Leatherhead, the funny vampire lady to be Wingnut, and Post Malone is rightful. They got Post Malone, and all he says is his own name. And on top of that, they got McLovin himself.
So you start with one. It's crazy. 2 follows 1. You will never guess what comes next.
I'm gonna die.
Timothy Oliphant.
Are you one of Superfly's mutants?
The name's Goldfin, not talking goldfish.
Pete Davidson.
To make me into a mutant.
And Danny Trejo as new characters.
My name is Mustang Sally.
They maybe didn't have superhero actor money, but they definitely threw a fair amount of cash into the voice cast side of things. One of the greatest aspects of this show is how perfectly they translated Mutant Mayhem's visuals from 3D to 2D. It's just as scratchy and grimy and dirty and lived in. But I think some of the designs actually look a little better in this show when it comes to the human characters. The human characters were intentionally rendered a little ugly and gnarled in the film, but this one dials that back a bit. In some ways, this does remind me of Rise of the TMNT a little bit with the thick outlines, but that had more of a clean look with vibrant colors and dynamically angular characters. Tales' characters are kinda lumpy and scratchy and scribbly, while also still being visually appealing. Every frame is just so damn cool. There's a lot of variety to the colors and lighting. This is probably the best looking Ninja Turtles show we've ever had, and that's a high bar, frankly. And speaking of high bars, I was curious how this show would top the action sequences in Rise. The answer is you can't. At least not the same way they did it. The previous series went for superhero impossible choreography with characters throwing each other through buildings or smacking each other down entire city blocks and smashing each other with magic force fields. It was bombastic and complex and willfully absurd in the best way. But Tales doesn't attempt that style, and instead aims for combat that's more adherent to the laws of physics and human limitations. It was a great pivot after Rise set the bar so high with spectacular superpower battles. Instead of trying and failing to copy that, they went a totally different direction and nailed that instead. These fights are more down to earth and realistic, so there's more tangible impact, and it feels like the characters are getting hurt more when they take a bad hit. It's a more relatable level of pain when the characters are reduced to about the same level of durability as a human being. It's cool seeing someone get 1 million shipping containers thrown at them or having whole buildings broken over their backs, but it starts to become harder as a viewer to grasp how much damage is being done with characters that can shrug these things off and keep fighting. I think it was a genius move to dial it back and play it more straight. Kinda makes it a little bit more violent, and I'm a weirdo because I love violence! And of course, Turtle Tales is a really solid follow-up to the movie's main themes about outsiders trying to find their place, found family, forgiveness, and second chances. Both story arcs land on a very exciting but also very emotional finale in which our turtles make a last-ditch effort to reach out to their enemies, even if they don't have consistent success. This version of the boys have a lot of compassion for even their greatest foes, and try to use violence as a last resort, which is pretty funny considering where they came from. I think the first story arc left more of an impression on me, but the second one still has highlights, like creating some brand new mutant characters to play with for future installments. And having the best fight scenes so far. Goldfin can really throw down, damn! Pigeon Pete is the funniest motherfucker in the universe. I love him. It's not all perfect, though. Sadly, I think Raphael's episode in the first arc is the weakest one in the season. He spends the entire episode tied up, so it's light on action, and it's kind of thematically a mess. There's a moment where he tries to talk his way out of the situation instead of fighting, but he still ends up having to fight anyway, so he doesn't really learn a lesson from it. There's a moment where he and this gang member that's guarding him find some common ground, but it doesn't lead either of them to a better understanding of themselves or each other. He just decides to let Raph go after he helps him. I can't figure out what the arc is supposed to be here. It's just kind of muddled and a bunch of disconnected things happen over and over, and then it's just done. Everyone else in part 1 gets a really good arc. Leo is unsure if he can function without a team to lead. Dawn second guesses his intelligence because he's worried the other guys overestimate his technical abilities. And Mikey is faced with a moral dilemma in that this guy will only help him find his brothers if he turns him into another mutant. Raphael's episode in part 2 is more exciting, but also extremely plot-focused. Poor Raph. First his goat gets washed, and now this. I think out of the 4 turtles, Raph just doesn't get a great character moment like the rest, and I'm hoping that if this gets some kind of second season, they could patch that up, but that's the other issue! Be honest, did you know this show was out, especially before it came to Netflix? Have you actually even heard of this? Because I'm noticing a disturbing pattern where streaming services will put the bare minimum effort into marketing, like 1, maybe 2 trailers max, and then just leave the shows to languish in obscurity. Remember Hitmonkey Season 2? There was no marketing for it at all. The show's official Twitter page didn't make a single post about Season 2. I think Hulu must have slashed their marketing budget so much that they had to take a more grassroots approach and contact people like me to try to get the word out. And I'm thankful to the producers of that show to let me interview the lead actor and the showrunners and whatnot, but my video pretty definitively flopped for one reason or another, and the people who did watch it, most of their comments were like, I didn't even know that this show got renewed for Season 2, let alone that it's been out for multiple months. And this show feels pretty much the same way. I didn't see a single soul online talking about Tales of the TMNT when it came out, and anytime I talked to friends about it, including even big Turtle fans, they said they had no idea it had released yet. It just quietly dropped on Paramount and no one noticed. I really like this show, and just like Hitmonkey Season 2, I have no idea if it had the viewership numbers necessary to keep going. It seems like the only way to get renewed in the streaming era of television is to be a massive record-breaking pop culture dominating explosion in the first 7 days. And if it's not that, they don't give a damn about it and cancel it. Are you serious? They canceled the franchise like 2 weeks after it ended? I mean the show, the franchise, not the Ninja Turtles franchise. By the way, if you guys have not seen the franchise, that show is the most scathing parody of MCU movies imaginable. It's hilarious. If Tales manages to continue somehow, I think it could be a really interesting format of doing 1 or 2 seasons between movies as a bridge and then saving the most important events for the theatrically released parts. I haven't really ever seen a TV series and movie series coexist like that. I think the intention was for Spider-Man the New Animated Series to be like that with the Raimi movies, but it didn't really get that far. But my fear is that Tales will just end up like that show, a really great single season that will end up largely forgotten. They added it to Netflix, so it's a little bit more accessible if you don't have that terrible, broken, horrible monstrosity of a streaming service, Paramount Plus, that crashes if I try to rewind the show 10 seconds or even pause it. If you can, go check it out on Netflix. It's a really solid first season that more than makes up for replacing its predecessor by being just as good in different ways. Let's hope longevity is one of the things that it'll do differently from Rise 2. Let me thank PIA VPN for sponsoring this video. Click on my link to get 83% off on private internet access. That's just $2.03 a month, and you also get 4 extra months completely for free. I always get mad at YouTube for not putting my videos in the subscription box because people will comment, "Finally, Xavier uploads again after all these years," not knowing 3 other videos came out within the last month already. So maybe that stupid bell icon thing will help you remember I exist. If you want other ways to support the channel, you can always go hit up that Patreon for early videos and exclusive stuff because it's just $1. I'm not kidding, it's only $1. Isn't that cool? If just 5% of the people subscribed to me donated only $1 a month, I could make videos even faster and keep my house. You can also check out our merch on TeePublic, or just buy some of my random stuff on eBay. I have a pretty substantial collection of old toys that are still in the box in perfect condition, so go take a look in case you find something you like. And lastly, since this is a YouTube video and you probably play Fortnite, drop my creator code XavierGM next time you buy a silly dance or a cool character skin. Really helps me out. See you next time.